Hello everyone and good afternoon. Welcome to the International Cooperation Hub of the R&I Days. I'm Cristina Russo. I'm the Director for International Cooperation at the Directorate General for Research and Innovation of the European Commission. I'm very happy to moderate this session on global challenges need global response. I would like first of all to introduce and thank the speakers that will join us in this panel from different continents. I start from where the sun has just risen. Good morning to Honorable Dr. Panchanathan, Director of the National Science Foundation in the US. It's still early morning for you, Dr. Panchanathan, so thank you very much for being with us. Crossing back the Atlantic, I now welcome Dr. Makanga. Dr. Makanga is the Executive Director of the EDCTP, the European and Developing Countries Clinical Trials Partnership. And last but not least, we are expecting to welcome Professor Giannini. Professor Giannini, she is the Assistant Director General for Education at Unesco. She is experiencing some technical problems with the connection, so she will join us later, and we will start the debate since we have very important and interesting things to discuss. The title of the session is quite straightforward. Most of the biggest challenges nowadays are global, and as such, they need a global response. We have been experiencing with COVID-19 that it is a great example of that. What we have been tackling during the pandemic was very difficult, it was very important, it was very challenging. The President of the European Commission, Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, clearly stated that the virus knows no borders and that this global challenge needs strong international cooperation. Therefore, to face the coronavirus, the EU has intensified its global efforts, joining forces with partner countries to find solutions and to maximize open access to scientific knowledge. We have also hosted a pledging marathon which raised almost 16 billion of euros for vaccine development, test and deployment. Through research and innovation, we have supported multilateral platforms and funded dedicated projects under the EU Horizon programs. So today we'll discuss with our honorable speakers, and I see Mrs. Giannini connected. Welcome, Mrs. Giannini. Nice to see you again. Nice to see you with us. So I'm catching up. Today we'll discuss with our speakers and with the participants connecting from all over the world, and welcome to all of you to this international cooperation session, how to further joining forces at global level. Those discussions, by the way, are very timely, also considering the ongoing talks at the UN General Assembly. But before hearing from our speakers, let me remind the audience that we will dedicate some time also for a questions and answers session. So please feel free to use the Q&A chat box on your screen to send us our question. So now let's start the debate, and I turn to you, Dr. Panchanathan. I would like to ask you, what has particularly impressed you in the way the scientific community has responded to the COVID crisis? What can we learn from this youth-inspired experience to help to shape the scientific workforce of the future? Floor is yours, Dr. Panchanathan.
Thank you so much, Cristina, and thank you to the European Commission for organizing this wonderful workshop. It's amazing to see the virtual workshop coming together so beautifully, and I want to thank all the organizers for their efforts. As you know, this is a global grand challenge, as you rightly pointed out, and we are all in the midst of it. But when you look at the solution pathways, we will all agree that science and technology plays a very, very important role. And I could even say it is at the forefront of providing solutions, whether it is testing, whether it is managing, whether it is therapeutics or vaccines or more. We clearly know that science and technology is the way that we are going to solve this problem and come out of it and be even more robust as we look into the future. At the National Science Foundation, for example, we have invested in over 1,000 what I call rapid response projects that essentially takes those fantastic ideas and solutions pathways that researchers across the nation, and when I say across the nation, many of them partner across the globe, and I'm going to be talking about one of the partnership as an example. These partnerships, global partnerships, with the ideas that we have, are the ways in which we are going to solve this problem. The best and the brightest ideas, the best and the brightest minds essentially result in the best and the brightest solutions. For example, one of our researchers, Dr. Romy Amaro, she's from the University of California, San Diego, actually started modeling in 2009 with the then Blue Water supercomputer that NSF invested in the H1N1 virus at the time. She took 160 million moving atoms and started to look at how they all interact with one another. And when this COVID crisis hit, she was able to quickly pivot that into the virus modeling for the COVID virus in our latest generation of computers called the Frontera, again, invested in by NSF. And she's making remarkable discoveries through that process. This shows how when you invest in science, which are far ahead of the problem domain sometimes it occurs, like what is happening now, you could get remarkable results. And that such partnerships within the nation and across the globe around these solution pathways is the way we move into the future. You talked about workforce. Clearly, if we are solving these problems today, then that's what is then creating the mindsets for the future of how people then embark on solving real problems that have societal and economic impact. So I cannot emphasize this more in the short time that I have, that science technology is a very important pathway, and that now brought together with very strong partnerships across the globe is an exceedingly important imperative to be able to find real solutions to this pandemic and for challenges in the future, such as natural disasters and other kinds of things that happen across the globe. I think this is a very important thing that we need to all work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Panchanathan, for giving us such a clear message in such a short time. We indeed need to keep to the timing. Let me turn now to Dr. Makamba. Dr. Makanga, following this line, as part of the global response to COVID-19, the European Union has been supporting relevant global cooperation initiatives in research and innovation, such as GLOPID-R, the Global Research Collaboration for Infectious Diseases Preparedness, and CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. So the question to you, Dr. Makanga, is the work done together with the European and developing countries' clinical trials partnership has been key to support research on the coronavirus and to strengthen research capacities in the sub-Saharan Africa. What were the factors, according to you, Dr. Makanga, that made this experience so unique and successful? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Christina, and thanks to the European Union for organizing this meeting and to our dear esteemed audience. The European and Developing Countries Clinical Trials Partnership, as you all know, is it is really a program that is leading in developing interventions in sub-Saharan Africa. And this program responded quickly to the COVID crisis. In April, we launched our emergency response call, and thanks to the European Commission and to the member states that supported the program. I want to highlight 8 key areas that have contributed significantly. By the end of 2019, the program had supported 217 clinical studies involving 130 clinical trials that were ongoing in 32 African countries. And as you can imagine, this involved 208 sub-Saharan African institutions collaborating with 150 European institutions in 18 countries. Now, this provided a springboard for quick response, building on the existing collaborations and infrastructure. Secondly, the program has been very focused on developing local scientific leadership in Africa and also in Europe. And this has helped developing research protocols that are relevant to the countries where the best, while being globally aligned to the global efforts. Thirdly, the timing. This was a timing when it was important to have comparative studies in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is to address biological responses that may be different in the region, demographics, issues that are related to the living conditions in sub-Saharan Africa and countermeasures, and where different testing approaches needed to be put in place, especially at the point of care. Thirdly, fifthly, this was a period of great innovation. We've had a lot of cooperation between the public sector and the private sector in areas of clinical trial designs, in the areas of designing new interventions against the virus. And this is working and helped to start the quick response. The fifth is the use of digital technology, which has extended to sub-Saharan Africa. And this is very important in the implementation of COVID studies. The sixth is regional bodies that have been very cooperative. In this case, the Africa CDC that is playing a center role, and the WHO in mobilizing the countries and ensuring that there is cooperation. The seventh factor is the rapidly growing public trust. And this is also pivoting on the strength that we've put in place on building ethics and regulatory environment in sub-Saharan Africa. And the eighth factor, which I cannot forget, is the speed that was necessary to respond quickly. And this required having resources from the European Union and also countries contributing from Europe and Africa to make sure that this work took off.
Thank you very much, Dr. Makanga, for highlighting the amazing work which was done by the EDCTP in response to the coronavirus, and we'll get back to that later on. Now I have the pleasure to have Professor Giannini here with us. And Professor Giannini, at UNESCO, you are witnessing how multilateral institutions have recently come under a spotlight in a wide range of areas, including on health research. What should we do to deepen and broaden the trust in multilateralism as part of our response to global challenges? Professor Giannini, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me start, recalling the importance of multilateralism, especially in these unprecedented crises and times. I think that what we have to do definitely is to show that it's functioning and transforming. These are the main two functions that the so-called rule-based multilateralism has been able to rise to the scale of this unprecedented challenge. This is for sure for education. I'm convinced that just looking at the global picture of this unpredictable and really unique situation we live in history, we can see a real kind of agile UN family on the move. Let me remind a bit our audience today of the historic disruption we lived since March this year, and still been somehow affecting countries. As you remember, UNESCO started to monitor numbers from the beginning, and at the peak of a pandemic, 1.6 billion children and youth all over the world were affected by the closure of educational institutions, and this has never happened in the world. It's about 119 countries. That means all the world has been hugely hit by this crisis in education. And today, according to our projections and numbers, we can say that around 24 million children and youth are still at risk this year not going back to school because of the effect of the pandemic in terms of financial crisis. So the next generation of multilateralism has to widen the base. I mean, it's about inviting new actors to the table to design solutions collaboratively. It's about including in response and the solutions we are providing to member states a larger constituencies. That's what UNESCO started to do, launching, and that's the ambition we had. The Global Education Coalition since the end of March. Today we have around the table some 150 partners. And it's not simply and crucially, of course, the UN family. It's about many companies, the private sector, somehow responding to our call for action and providing solutions and supporting governments in this unprecedented crisis. So I'm convinced that one of the key words I heard from my colleagues in the panel today, which is partnership, I should say cooperation, I should say a new kind of solidarity that we discover in these last few months. It's a bit the way to see multilateralism being fortified than weakened, as despite some different opinions we listen to and we hear around, especially this week when we had the General Assembly in New York. And the real competition, to conclude this part, we face today is to mitigate the effect of this pandemic. In our field is going concretely to address topics like learning losses. It's about, as I said before, preventing as much as possible dropout. It's about preventing the risk of reversing progress. We had a decade of progress in education. We had still impressive numbers of children out of school, as we know, especially in the south of the world, but definitely we did a progress. And now we have a huge responsibility, and in front of a big and global challenge, we cannot find a national solution. It's about really looking at this challenge with one voice, one mission, and one action plan.
Thank you very much, Professor Giannini. With that, we close the first round of discussion here. And I think we can have three concepts, which are stronger cooperation, enhanced solidarity, and new partnerships. I think these are very important and sum up the discussion that we had so far. But now I'm very pleased to call Dr. Panchanathan for a second round of questions, and of course also the other speakers. Dr. Panchanathan, I would like to ask you, the COVID experience has shown us the value of strong international partnerships in responding to the crisis, as we just said. What do you think we have to do in order to create stronger partnerships in order to address these and eventually other challenges in the health areas and also in other possible areas? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the question again, and it's wonderful to interact with the other panelists. Excellent points that are being brought out. Again, thank you for assembling this group together. On this importance of global partnerships, there cannot be a better time or a better context that requires this global partnerships working together, and I cannot overstate this. Now, global grand challenges, COVID is one of them, require that kind of partnerships to come together, as I was saying earlier. To the project that I was mentioning in the last questions response, I want to highlight that it has got international partnerships. Dr. Elisa Fada at Hamilton Institute at Maynooth University in Ireland is part of the project. This team is international, And why is it possible? It's because we can have remote access with the Frontera computer being available over the cloud. So in other words, technology does enable and facilitate this unbelievable bringing together of people across the globe. You are seeing this in action right now. This technology is making possible this bringing together of expertise across the globe to work together instantaneously. Yes, there are some challenges, but every challenge is an opportunity for us to create and recreate and innovate. So this digital infrastructure has essentially resulted in breaking silos. In fact, I have had many conversations with my international counterparts so easily because of this digital infrastructure being put to work much more seamlessly these days. We talk about, you asked, what are those kinds of things that we will do with COVID, as well as moving into the future? In these conversations, I always try to understand where is the common ground? Where are those grand challenges that we both or we multilaterally subscribe to? And those grand challenges can be in the area of water, in the area of sustainability, in the area of poverty elimination, in the area of artificial intelligence, in the area of quantum and the future of quantum in terms of computing. It might be in the area of how do we build the robust, smart and connected communities. How do we bring the planetary and the human ecosystems into this web that is woven in a way that we all work together so seamlessly and naturally in solving these grand challenges and setting the frame for the future? As I said in the earlier response, these kinds of problems that we are solving today will then pave the way for rapid assembly of solutions because we are already pre-wiring ourselves in these global grand challenge contexts that we are all working together because we all deeply care about them. And today we know that by working together, we can actually find some unbelievable innovations and solutions. And that's why I think this is an exceedingly important time to leverage and see how we can drive the roadmap for the future, which to us is exceedingly important to engage global partners. Global partners find real solutions to global grand challenges because the context is best understood in different parts of the world, and the collective context being explored together by groups of scientists from across the globe can find unbelievably innovative solutions that has real impact on human being and society. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I'm happy to take any other questions after the other panelists have had a chance to provide their inputs.
Thank you, Dr. Panchanathan. Of course, we will have a debate later on. But before doing that, I would still like to ask a question to Dr. Makanga and then to Professor Giannini. You, Dr. Panchanathan, have highlighted the interconnection of the grand societal challenges. And I think that, Dr. Makanga, you as Executive Director of the EDCTP has experienced this interconnection amongst the different aspects of the societal challenges. And what I would like to ask you is more concretely how you would envisage, based on your experience in the EDCTP, to the way forward in international cooperation with such a multilateral platform, taking into account the different aspects of the challenges that those platforms are called to deal with.
Thank you very much for this very important question. I'm a strong believer that experience is not the best teacher, but evaluated experience is the best teacher. And learning from the experience of the recent outbreaks, the most recent being the COVID, which we are still in, and the Ebola outbreak. Looking ahead, we have to think and plan long-term. Often we are looking at investments in a very short-term and fragmented way. But looking forward, we need to think long-term and ensuring that there is a strong connection between international investments and the local investments, ensuring that there is that strong trust and contribution from the host countries that will co-own and take that leadership. when these activities are happening. And this takes me to one of the experiences that I cited, and that is the development of local capacity that is relevant to address local solutions, but aligned globally to ensure that whatever is developed in a particular country can be applied in a different context. Experiences from different regions can be shared easily and applied in different regions. This is the way to foster more impactful future collaborations. The other bit that I want to highlight is the lesson that we've learned of having that collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. Drawing from the most recent experience of COVID, when you see the level of innovation that has taken place, coming right from the clinical trial designs, for example, that are being improved every day, and leveraging platforms that have been developed for other diseases to be able to address a current problem that is at hand. This teaches us that we need to invest and put in place mechanisms that would foster both cooperation with the public sector and the private sector. The other bit is the interdisciplinary approach. Again, this is something I cannot overemphasize, that in all we do, we should not have a parochial approach where we are looking at a single disease, a single intervention, but we should be looking at these problems in terms of diseases in an interconnected way, and building infrastructures and developing people that can be applied to address future challenges that we may be faced with. The other bit that I need to emphasize as well is that as multilaterals, there is need to have increased flexibility to act quickly and in a timely way, to be able to work with the different partners. And this flexibility and nimbleness is key to ensuring that we'll be able to address problems in a timely manner, but also to increase that leverage that we get from the collaborative partners. Lastly, I want to say that things are not going to be the same in the post-COVID era. So we need to, and the multilaterals need to look at the global trends in terms of digital changes, in terms of the way that we relate with the populations that we are interacting with, making sure that whatever we do, we have an end-to-end thinking where we are looking at the end user at the end of the day, and also thinking sustainability. To conclude, I have to say that the resources are limited, and in order to make the best of these, we need to think long-term and put in place mechanisms to foster international cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Makanga. In terms of the fact that the world will not be the same after COVID, and the need to have new mechanisms and to have long-term solutions, that leads me to my last question to Professor Giannini. I would like to ask you, Professor Giannini, how do you see the future cooperation with international organizations such as Unesco in facing global challenges, not only on health threats, but also on others, like climate change and the digital transition?
Well, I take some of the words I've heard. I love so much flexibility, and I translated a bit this word in another I like so much: agility. I dream of a multilateral system which can really demonstrate on the ground to be agile, to be long-term oriented, and to really also be a bit more brave, may I say like this, in the sense that this crisis has been really a game changer. We say many times the world will not be the same. Let me say maybe the world is not already the same. To fly, to give a concrete example, which affects our own private life, to fly from Paris to to Florence, I have to be tested because the situation is a bit unbalanced in Europe. And of course, countries are taking their measures. So it's about changing the mindset as individuals, and it's about taking some good lessons learned and not simply, looking at the more negative sides of the crisis. And disruption has opened wide the window of innovation. So I think there is a lot of new opportunities and very much room for being innovative, for being thinkers looking at the future and thinking out of the box in international organizations as well, in research that usually are oriented like this. And it's about really building together a new kind of culture of transformation. Let me give you some very briefly some concrete examples. In education, as I said before, the challenge is very huge now because we are at risk of losing decades of progress, and the challenge of the learning crisis was already very much important, relevant before this pandemic. But now I think that we have the opportunity to see how we can use a different methodology, how we can, for instance, try to find new solutions to the new challenges and the concrete problems we have in education. I mentioned dropout, I mentioned learning losses, I want to mention the role and the status of teachers who definitely became heroes of these current times, with a so-called mission-oriented approach. This is a model that you experience at the European Commission. I had the privilege to be part of the advisory group to the former Commissioner of Research and Innovation, Carlos Moedas, and we elaborated and presented to the Commissioner under Mariana Mazzucato's leadership the idea that you must give to citizens a more accountable system of financing research and demonstrate that you put your money as European citizens in that context to find solutions to very concrete problems like cancer, like climate change, and so on. So let's now see how you can adopt a system like this, approaching the challenges we have in education globally. So you have to see Africa, for instance, has different challenges than Europe. But in this crisis, which is the first global crisis for education as well as many other public sectors, you have to identify some specific issues that with some specific missions, that means that's the money needed, that's the numbers and the target I have to reach, and this is the solution I have to provide. You can really achieve. So once again, crisis is a double-faced word in ancient Greek, and it means separation between the fuzzy situation I have in front of me and giving the possibility to make a choice. It's time to make brave choices, and it's time to be really, the platform for a better society.
Thank you very much, Professor Giannini, also for recalling the mission-oriented approach that at the EU level is guiding the preparation of the next EU Research and Innovation Framework Programme, Horizon Europe. And also, I think that I would sum up this second round of discussion by saying, let's turn the challenges into opportunities. And with that, we still have 10 minutes, so we have to rush a bit, and I would like to take some questions. We have a lot of questions. I see a very interesting one. I wouldn't say that it's a surprising question, but it's very interesting, and I will address it to Dr. Panchanathan, which refers to the fact that the US has withdrawn from the WHO. So, Dr. Panchanathan, how do you frame this with all the multilateral efforts that are needed at the moment? I pass you the floor for a short reply.
Yeah. So, I'm not in the State Department to comment on that. But what I can tell you is the following: from the NSF perspective, as a leader of the agency, the Science Foundation, what I can tell you is that science is global, and that NSF is doing everything that it can to partner with global partners, like-minded partners who share our values and aspirations, so that we might find common solutions to these grand challenge problems, COVID and others, across the world. And that's the way we plan to configure ourselves. We have always operated that way. In fact, this has opened up opportunities, as was mentioned earlier by you as well as Professor Giovanni, so that every crisis is a challenge, and as was mentioned, is two sides of the coin. It's also an opportunity. And so the opportunity here is how might we all come together and work harder, stronger, and with the intent and purpose to solve these grand challenge problems quickly and with an agile and adaptive approach. That's something that was mentioned through the comments that I heard today. That's how we feel at NSF, is how might NSF be a platform that allows our fantastic researchers, scientists, and others to be able to rapidly configure their partnership with like-minded and similar expertise across the globe, or complementary expertise across the globe, to be able to find real solutions to grand challenge problems. That's the way we look at it. And this is something that NSF will continue to intensify and work harder. And this has given us the opportunity to be able to do that, in so many ways, including establishing these strong partnerships across the globe and being able to even be present in these kinds of audiences to have this dialogue, which then further shapes how we will move into the future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Panchanathan, for those encouraging words. Now I have a question on antimicrobial resistance, which I think should be addressed to Dr. Makanga. Dr. Makanga, what about antimicrobial resistance? Isn't this the next global pandemic? How do we plan to address this issue? I pass you the floor for a short reply, Dr. Makanga.
Thank you very much. I cannot agree more that antimicrobial resistance is a very important area that we need to address, and we need to look at this in the broader context beyond antibiotics, but against all microbes. And in this case, in product development, this is one area that has to be given special attention to protect both the new and the existing interventions against drug resistance. Additionally, this also falls in the area of preparedness. And in this case, mechanisms have to be put in place to prepare for and prevent antimicrobial resistance, and also to ensure that there is ongoing research to counter this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Makanga. Certainly the US is catching a lot of attention in this debate today, and it's not surprising. So I have a question here on the fact that the US has withdrawn from Unesco too. And I would like to pass the question to Professor Giannini to ask how the withdrawal of the US from Unesco will have an impact on the other global challenges, such as the digital transition. How do you see it, Professor Giannini?
Well, I'm on the same page of my colleagues from the US National Science Foundation. Education, science, culture, all these topics, UNESCO has the mandate in the UN system to develop policies and to advise governments and mobilize constituencies around about the platform which can reach citizens and academic communities, and they go beyond politics. So I think that what we are doing now, it's a stronger cooperation which is about, in my field, specifically education, providing solutions, concrete actions to respond to this crisis, and looking beyond that, as I said before, in terms of the development SDG 4 agenda. And this is a global issue, including the US and including their communities.
Very much, Professor Giannini. I think that time is running quickly, so we are about to finish the session. So I would like to ask to the three of you one quick word, a concept that we can leave to our audience that would be for you the important thing to remember out of this session. So very briefly, Dr. Panchanadhan, what would you say? What shall we say to the audience to bring home?
I would cheat and say two words: partnerships and innovation.
Dr. Makanga.
Long-term investments and sustainability.
Great, thank you. Professor Giannini.
I have the privilege to say the last, maybe, so I try to summarize principles I heard. Transformation, I think, is what we need now, and being transformative. And this is about also the other principles, in my opinion.
But then thank you very much. I was very honored to moderate this session. I think that on my side, as a Director for International Cooperation in research and innovation at the European Commission, I will bring back with me all the messages that have emerged during the discussion in order to help us to shape the future of the international cooperation policy in research and innovation. We are developing a renewed strategy which will serve, amongst others, as the basis for our international cooperation within the next EU Research and Innovation Framework Programme, the Horizon Europe program. We want to deepen what we do in order to tackle together the global societal challenges. And I think this session has been really very, very important. I wouldn't like to finish the session without really thanking warmly each of you, Dr. Panchanadhan, Dr. Makanga, and Professor Giannini, to thank all the audience for the questions, for the interest. And I also would like to thank all those that are working behind the scenes, and I see many of them here with me, that made it possible. This session, the second session of the R&I Days couldn't take place physically, has to be taken virtually, but I think that was a great opportunity because we could connect. I heard this morning that 31,000 people were connected, and all of that has been made possible for all the technical work that has also been done. And I was really pleased to be with you for this session. So goodbye. Enjoy the rest of the R&I Days. We have another interesting session on research and innovation in our hub, and plenty of them still to come until tomorrow. Thank you very much.